went to a university where it was compulsory for us to learn a vocational skill. And even though I really did not understand the essence of this, but I just thinking about it right now, I wish I had taken it more seriously. And, I could have been a business owner with the skill that I've been able to learn in my university. I know you might want to ask, or you might be curious to ask, what exactly was the skill I learned? It was actually fruit juice and wine making. To be honest, when I chose that line of vocation, I just wanted something that I thought of as easy to learn, easy to grasp, and just pass. I just wanted to pass and leave. So that brings me to today. We decided to take a road trip to Chapel Down Winery. Yeah, it's one of the famous British winemaking industry. Did I even say one of, or it is the famous winery industry in Britain. It is nestled in the beautiful hills of Kent. It's a place where the sun paints the vineyard gold. The air smells sweet with ripe grapes. Though when we went, there was no grape, and that's because of its season. A friendly guide took us on a journey through the different wines, sharing stories about each one of them. This is what we learned.
6 years ago. Now there may be a couple of us on the tour that may remember that far back. Sadly, I do. Yes, it was 46 years ago the vineyard was established by an Englishman who was learning his trade as a winemaker and a viticulturist, which is a grower of grapes, learning his trade in Germany, in the south of Germany. And while he was there, he thought, well, if we can grow grapes in the south of Germany, why can't we grow grapes in the south of England? Okay, because technically we are too far north, we are too cold to grow grapes. All right? We're above 50 degrees north, therefore technically too cold. But because we benefit here from what is called a marine climate, we get a lot warmer air move across this part of the country. So when I'm talking about this part of the country, I'm talking about Cornwall all the way through to the Wash, the south of England. It gets much milder temperatures, gets much warmer summers than further north. So he thought, why not give it a go growing grapes here? So between him and his father-in-law, they bought this plot of land. It's called Spots Farm when he bought it, to establish a vineyard. And it was for three reasons why. One is its aspect to the sun, because you're all now staring up at it, okay? I know the sun's behind me, because this plot faces southwest, okay? That means when we have grapes on the vine in the summer, the sun rises over there first thing in the morning, and it sets over there at night. Therefore, the grapes get full sunlight all day, okay? So you want southerly or southwesterly facing ground. So direction. The other thing is the slope, okay? You can see that the vineyard kind of falls away from us here, and you can see through the trees how it falls down the other side. And when we get behind the sanctuary, you'll also see it all kind of funnels, everything funnels down to a kind of little valley that goes between these two fields. And you want sloping ground for drainage, okay? The plant likes water like any plant, but it doesn't like much water, and actually performs better when it has to struggle for water. So you want to plant the vines on sloping ground. It also helps as a frost preventer, particularly air frost. Air frost will roll down the hill rather than sit on the vines. So that's the other reason. And the other reason is we've got a gentle breeze now. I did a tour this morning, it was a lot windier this morning. The breeze, predominant wind in this direction is from southwest, brings us warm, wild, wet air, okay? Now we need the air movement for several reasons. One is that the plant pollinates naturally, so it pollinates on the breeze. We don't need to attract bees or pollinators, it pollinates naturally. The other thing is that when we have grapes on the vine, If we get rain, we need them to dry out with air movement and heat rather than just direct heat. Okay, it's a bit like putting a hairdryer on. And the other reason is, again, it's a frost prevent to help stop frost building up. So what we've got now is juice, okay? We now need to turn it into wine. So how do you turn something into wine? You have to ferment the juice, okay? So we'll fill one of these full of juice. So one of these takes 25,000 litres. That's about 30,000 bottles of wine, one of those, okay? We'll then inoculate it by adding yeast, okay? Because that's what starts to ferment. And what fermentation is yeast eating away at sugar, the sugars in the grape juice, and converting that sugar into alcohol. Hurrah! Okay. We've got alcohol. That takes about 3 weeks. So fill it up. Now there are 3 main byproducts from making, from fermentation. One is CO2, okay? So in this instance, that is released through those funnels at the top. That's released into the environment and is reabsorbed into the farm. That's why we're in the middle of the countryside. If you wouldn't see a winery in the middle of a city unless they had carbon capture, but ours is all naturally recycled. So carbon dioxide, heat is another thing. Okay, it creates heat. Now the wine has to be kept at a certain temperature, so it's about 15 degrees. Now we can keep that constantly, that temperature constant, because these tanks are double skinned, okay? So there's an inner tank that has the juice / wine, and there's an outer tank just surrounding it. And you can see, especially on these ones behind, they're easy to see. These yellow hoses that go into the back, they carry hot or cold water. So if the wine starts to get too hot, we can surround it with cold water, which will bring the temperature down. If it starts to get too cold, we can put warm water around it, bring the temperature up. That's why we can do all our fermentation outside, no matter what. We can ferment through winter, summer, spring, because honestly these, although they're not fermenting during the summer because they're empty, these, you put your hand on one of these, you'd stick to it. They get so hot in the sunlight from across there. The other thing we get is something called lees, L-E-E-S, which is basically dead yeast, okay? So yeast is munching away at the sugars, eventually gets full up, sinks down to here, down to the bottom. So when the wine is ready, and we know when the wine's ready, so you've got this nice little tap here. We can all come around with a glass or two. We all stand around and go, yeah, that's all right. No, not that. But it is done on taste. It's also done on scientific analysis. But it's when the wine's ready, great, we'll pump it off. Hoses onto here, off it'll go into another tank. Again, cold settle till we decide what we're going to do with it. Down here, we've got a level of sticky brown yeast. Dead, it's like a very fine sand, it's not very pretty at all. So we've got to deal with Tenterden Scout. So every Thursday night we throw a couple of kids in there with buckets and spades. We don't really. Oh, you see this man here with his head? He'll go in there and clean it. Okay. Somebody will be in there to clean it. It's got to be cleaned out. Okay, it's got to be washed out before the next lot goes in. You can't leave anything in behind there because lees can change the flavours. So we've now got wine, okay? We've now got some tanks fulls of wine. Now, what are we going to do with it? Certain wines we will make, we just want a still wine. We can get still wine out really quick, okay? We will be trying a 22 Bacchus, which is a grape that was grown last summer, harvested, processed throughout the autumn, stored up until Christmas. After Christmas, it goes away, gets bottled, labelled, brought back. We've got to sell it. It can be on the shelves for March, okay? 6-7 months we can get a still out. But our biggest production is sparkling. About 68% of our wine is sparkling. Now you make sparkling wine by blending different grapes together. Our brew, our biggest seller, is made from Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier and Pinot Blanc. 4 grapes. So the winemakers work out the correct blend, okay? So they'll have a tank for those 4 wines, and then they'll fill up one of these full of that blend. Stir it around, leave it alone for 6 months, okay? All that is, it creates what is called a base wine. It's basically a still wine. It will go through a minor ferment, okay? because even though we don't add yeast, there's natural yeast in the air and in the tanks. So it will go through a minor ferment, so it'll sit on very fine lees for a while, which can change, which adds the flavour. So we've now got just a still wine. We haven't got sparkling wine yet. We've got to now magically turn that into sparkling wine. Okay, so I'm now going to take you off and explain how that's done. Any questions about fermentation? I'll talk about.
Yeah, I have a question. So back in school, what we were told was you have to leave the wine for a longer time for you to like get that alcohol.
You can get it very quick. Just shut them around. Give yourself some room if you need. Okay, well this is welcome to what's called the riddling room we're in now. Okay, it doesn't mean I'm going to ask you riddles. Riddling is part of the process in the making of sparkling wine. Now we make our wine in what is called the traditional method. Okay. If you're a bit pretentious, it's called the méthode traditionnelle, all right? It is the same as method champenoise, it's the same as champagne method. So, how do you make sparkling wine? We've got our base wine in the tank, okay? We've made our base wine, sat there for 6 months on fine lees, maturing. It then goes through a process called tirage. And what tirage means is we bottle it, we add a liquor de tirage, and a liquor de tirage is basically more yeast and more sugar. And then we pop a beer cap on it, it's just a regular crown cap on the top. And then we pop it in a cage, like the gold ones really, not the big steel ones, the gold one. We pop it in a cage and we leave it for about 18 months, okay? Where it will go through a second fermentation because we've added more yeast, we've added more sugar. We want to have the same thing happening here that happened in the tank, okay? So fermentation, what gets created? Carbon dioxide. Do we want to keep it this time? Yes, that's where the bubbles come from, okay? It also creates heat, so once it goes through tirage, the cages are taken off and put into our cellars. Now, our cellars are a very fancy word for barns. We've got barnfuls of... I've had 5 wines and it still does it to me, right? Roof of your mouth, tip of your tongue. Oh, that's a bit sharp, okay? Oh, that's a bit sharp. Now, what you have just experienced there is something called acidic shock, right? We don't write that on the bottles because it puts people off. Right?
Acidic.
But it has. What you've done is shocked your palate, okay? Because the acidity levels in the wine are a lot higher than the acidity levels inside your mouth. So you've just shocked your palate. So, but what's happening now is while you're listening to me is your body is going, what on earth have you done, okay? And your saliva glands are now trying to balance out the acids in your mouth. So your second sip, it's still going to be young, fresh and zesty, but it won't be as acidic. You'll get more fruit than you will acid this time, okay? Give it a go. Yeah? I'm right. Nice, sounds like I know what I'm doing. God for that. Tell me when it doesn't work. So it's kind of, you're getting more fruit now, okay? You're getting a lot more fruit from it. And this is probably coming out about the right temperatures, just looking at the fridge. When I served this morning on the first tour I did, and it had just, because the fridge hadn't been opened or closed, or it was like really at low temperature. And sometimes we all at home serve wine too cold, okay? You go to your fridge is probably set for about 4 degrees. Now, the correct temperature to serve this is about 7 degrees, all right? White wine about 7 degrees.
Funny enough, I wasn't a big wine taker when I was in Nigeria. But moving down to this place, I have come to love wine a lot. In fact, it is a tradition for me when I come to visit you. For the first time, I would definitely buy you a bottle of wine. When night falls, it's a place where the love of wine and beauty of the countryside come together, creating a captivating experience for those who enter. You should also visit Chapel Down Winery if you get the chance to. You would love it here.